Welcome back. Joining us now to talk about coronavirus recovery, all the latest news, the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell from Capitol Hill. Senator, thanks for being here.
Yeah, good evening.
You spent some time on the Senate floor today lambasting the House Speaker's efforts on this latest $3 trillion bill and what's inside it. I wanted to ask you about the messaging that you're sending about pumping the brakes on a phase 4 as of yet. You had the Fed chair, Powell, say that this is a financial situation without modern precedent.
Additional fiscal support could be costly, but worth it if it helps avoid long-term damage and leaves us with a stronger recovery.
Essentially saying lawmakers may need to do more. How do you reconcile those two things?
Easily. I think the chairman of the Fed is correct, and we do anticipate having to act again at some point. I do think, though, in terms of timing, the chairman of the Fed didn't say how quickly, and we need to verify how we've done so far, make sure we know whatever mistakes we made, we don't want to repeat. So I'm certainly not ruling out another fiscal package, and I would say the chairman of the Fed and I and the administration are not necessarily in different places.
You called the Speaker's efforts just a political marker. Why not take that as the first in a first serve and volley back and forth as you all have done before?
Well, it's an 1,800-page liberal wish list. It strikes me as hardly salvageable. Just to give you an example of some of the absurdity, there's money in there for illegal immigrants. It mentions the word cannabis, of all things, 68 times more than the word jobs or hire are mentioned in the entire bill. It's a parade of absurdities that can hardly be taken seriously. Let me tell you what I will predict, Brett. Brett, I think the President and Senate Republican majorities will be on the same page when we get to the point where we need to do another bill. And our red line is going to be liability protections for those who are brave enough to begin to open up the economy again in the wake of the trial lawyers who are descending already on hospitals and doctors and businesses. As of about a week and a half ago, 771 lawsuits had already been filed. So we're working on a narrowly crafted protection from liability for things directly related to the coronavirus, and that will have to be a part of any package, because if we're really going to get the economy up and going again, people have to be brave enough to begin to engage in economic activity. How about the presidents of universities? Are they willing to open up for the fall? Or are we going to have another period of time where not only K through 12 students, but potentially college students are still at home? All of those questions need to be answered by the fall. Liability protection will help provide the answer.
What triggers that negotiation start? I mean, the PPP, the next tranche, is going to be up at some point. What will trigger the action of legislation?
Yeah, well, as I said, the President and Senate Republicans are going to be in the same place. We will let you know when we think the time is ripe to begin to move again. I think there's a high likelihood we'll do another bill. And I've just indicated what will need to be a part of any bill that actually gets a presidential signature and is brought up and passed by a Republican majority in the Senate.
You said wait to get word, but is word soon?
Look, I think we're all talking about this. I talked to the Secretary of the Treasury about it yesterday, to the President's Chief of Staff and to the President recently about this. I think we all believe that another bill probably is going to be necessary, but I'm not prepared today to put a precise date on when that will be. What I can tell you is, I told you earlier, that it's going to include liability protections in order to get through the Senate and in order to be signed by the President. And we'll look at what the conditions are in the near future and decide how that ought to be crafted. But it's not going to be a $3 trillion left-wing wish list like the Speaker is apparently going to try to jam down the throats of her majority either later this week or early next week.
You mentioned schools. You think the University of Louisville should open up this fall?
I want them to feel comfortable to be able to open up this fall, and I think answering this liability question is a big part of that. Look, the country is yearning to begin to get back to normal. We want to do it consistent with phase 1 and 2 of the coronavirus task force that the administration set up, the White House task force. More and more people believe that we can begin to safely engage again, practicing social distancing, wearing a mask, which I had on until I stood here in front of the camera. We're doing that in the Senate. We're up and running. We've been in session the last 2 weeks. I'm not sure where the House is, but they're not here.
Did you get different medical advice than the House did?
We asked the Capitol physician how we could safely re-engage. We took his advice, and we're practicing it. We're following the advice we've been given.
Have you been tested?
I visited the White House last week, and the answer to that is yes.
Dr. Bright is up testifying in the House today, saying that the administration was woefully prepared, says it's still not prepared.
Those plans have been in place, and it's disappointing they were not pulled out in January of this year and followed. They were not put on the table with a strong leader indicating these are our plans. Everyone fall in line and follow through with this plan.
You said that the previous administration didn't leave a plan. They pushed back against that.
I was wrong. They did leave behind a plan, so I clearly made a mistake in that regard. As to whether or not the plan was followed and who's the critic and all the rest, I don't have any observation about that because I don't know enough about the details of that, Brett, to comment on it in any detail.
Senator Burr pulled himself off the chairmanship of the Intelligence Committee today. There's an investigation, FBI investigation. Dianne Feinstein, senator from California, also being investigated for what her husband did with stocks. Your thoughts on that, and have you made a decision about replacing Senator Burr as chair of that committee?
Well, Chairman Burr and I had a chance to talk about that this morning. I think he did the right thing for the committee and for our Republican conference. I thank him for doing that, and at some point, obviously, I'll be naming a new chair.
Senator Rubio, Senator Risch?
I'll be naming a new chair sometime soon.
Okay. Let me get your thoughts on the Michael Flynn situation and the news about this unmasking. What do you make of it, and is it important in your mind?
Well, if there were, in fact, misbehavior surrounding the Flynn case, the American public needs to know. And clearly that was the view of the Attorney General. I gather it's now in a rather unusual procedure being reviewed by the district judge before whom the case was. I think we're just anxious to get the facts. What actually happened? The American public needs to know. All of us would like to know. And one thing about Washington, you guys are so good at your job, the truth always comes out. Sometimes it takes a little longer than other times, but we'll find out what in fact did happen.
I want to ask you about the election. You've called it a challenging environment. If a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most confident, where do you think Republicans are at holding the Senate?
Well, I'm never totally confident in any race, but I can say with regard to this question, I've said the same thing from the beginning of this cycle to right now. Excuse me. We have 23 members up. We have a really big class, and the reason we have a really big class is this is the class that took our majority back in 2014, so we have a lot of people up. 23 up, the Democrats only have 12. This was a challenging cycle from the beginning to the middle to now. And I think the majority in the Senate is very much in question, as it has been for a year and a half.
Are you trying to get Secretary of State Pompeo to run in Kansas?
That's been my hope. You can see how well I've done so far.
Are you still hopeful on that front?
Well, the filing deadline is June 1st, so I guess the suspense won't last much longer.
What do you tell vulnerable Republicans in tough races, whether they should be embracing the president fully or providing some distance from the president? Do you think that this will be a referendum about how this administration handles the health crisis and the economic crisis?
Look, every state is different, and far be it from me to give advice to a candidate in Montana versus Colorado versus Maine. I think each of our candidates are very sharp. They got elected 6 years ago. They know their states best, and I don't have any kind of universal recommendation about how to run in a given state.
You think there'll be an in-person Republican convention?
I have no idea. That's a very interesting question. I think that's the current game plan, but I think we have to see what the status of the pandemic is in late summer and make the call then.
What's your biggest worry right now?
Right now, getting the economy open, getting this coronavirus beginning to recede in all parts of the country, and helping America stage a comeback. We had a fabulous economy as late as February of this year, and we'd like for the American people to begin to benefit from a comeback as soon as possible. Look, we can't borrow enough money to prop this economy up indefinitely. We have to begin to engage the economy again. I'm convinced, Brett, that we can do that safely.
The president tweeted out that he thinks President Obama should be called up to a hearing in the Senate. He calls it Obamagate.
Obamagate. It's been going on for a long time. It's been going on from before I even got elected, and it's a disgrace.
Do you call it that? And what do you think about that call to have him testify?
Look, that'll be up to Chairman Graham to make those kind of decisions. I think he may have addressed that already. I'm not certain.
Yeah, he said he would be uncomfortable with it and likely wouldn't happen. Well, where do you think this investigation goes?
Look, that'd be up to Chairman Graham to determine how to handle this. I have a lot of confidence in him, and he knows what he's doing, and I'm going to follow his lead.
Finally, if you're talking to somebody in Kentucky, you're up for re-election as well. What do you tell them this race is about?
Well, in the Kentucky race, it's a little different from others. What I tell my constituents is I'm one of 4 congressional leaders. I'm the only one not from California or New York, and that I'm uniquely situated to look out for Middle America, and in particular, Kentucky. So consistent with my responsibilities as Majority Leader, I try to do the best I can for Kentucky. I think it's been a real benefit to our state to have the Majority Leader of the Senate, and really that's the core argument in my reelection.
Senator McConnell, we appreciate the time.
Thank you, Brett.